to the IdeaCast interview series, episode 24. My guest today is Michelle Kuei, and Michelle is an author, motivational speaker. She's also a coach in the sense that she is a personal visibility confidence coach, and she coaches other coaches. She also happens to be a clinical pharmacist. So a very dynamic person indeed, and I would also consider her to be a fearless navigator of life experience. That's my my assessment. So Michelle and I have a really what I consider to be an inspiring conversation. So I invite you to join us, and hopefully there are things for you to take away from this that will be inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us. And this is essentially an informal part one. I'll be bringing Michelle back hopefully in a couple of weeks after this upload, and we're going to talk about her book, Perfectly Normal, more in depth in that episode, so you can look forward to that. And again, thank you for joining us. Michelle, welcome to the IdeaCast interview series. I'm so glad to have you on board, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting.
Oh, it's a delight. It's a delight because you and I had a good conversation in our pre-meet, and I just want more of that. So I'm looking forward to it. So let's be traditional here, and I will ask you to start with a little bit of a background about yourself, both personal and business, or however you wish to serve it up. But yeah, let's find out more about Michelle.
Absolutely. I'm currently living in Los Angeles, California. I used to live in New York, so I am a very traditional New Yorker. The East Coast attitude, it's about go, 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 get things done. So I had a lot of that. Prior to living in New York, I came from Taiwan. I was born in Taiwan. I came to America when I was 15 years old.
Okay.
I remember coming to America, I spoke no English. So going to even just ordering from a takeout store, I was struggling with that, right? Because back then, I think it was 1980s. Back then, when you go to a Kentucky Fried Chicken, it's not menu by number. It used to all be words. You have to be able to speak to describe the item in order to get it. And that to me was a big struggle when I came to this country. Because in Taiwan, we didn't learn English until you are in junior high school.
Wow.
And for me, it was a huge transition coming from a non-English speaking country to an English speaking country. So there's a lot of adjustment back then. I graduated from pharmacy school, so I have a doctor of pharmacy degree. And in 2018, there's a transition shift that made me wanted to decide, you know what? Pharmacy is really not my thing. So I decided to enroll myself into a coaching program. I got certified as a life coach. And now I am working with coaches to help them to launch their business. So a lot of my audience and a lot of my clients, they're women coaches who's also launching their own business. They're getting ready to get out there to get seen, get heard, and get hired. I published a book in 2019. It's called Perfectly Normal. And I'm also a motivational speaker. So I do a lot of public speaking. Now I'm like reaching out to the international. So that's a little bit about me. And there's one piece of information that I left out, which is my disability. I just maybe a one piece, but a big piece that I have left out. I am 4 feet 4 inches tall. I walk with crutches, and this disability is a result of a car accident that took place when I was 11 years old. And this happened when I was in Taiwan. I was coming out from school one day, and then a car hit me. The next thing I know, I was in the hospital. And from that point on, I've been just living with this disability.
In doing my show prep and researching you, and I'll share this with you. Sometimes it's kind of weird because I'm like peeling layers back on somebody's life. It's almost like a professional form of stalking, and I have to correct myself when I say stalking because I know it's not anything to joke about. But it's like I really have to get in and feel the person and start to really understand. And so yeah, I got absorbed into the story of your being injured, and I'm a fan of a band called The Dead Can Dance, and they have a song called Fortune Presents Gifts Not According to the Book. And it's based on a Baroque poem by Louis de Gongora, and it's basically talking about how life can throw you a curveball. And so I listened to that song just before this interview, just to sort of, I want to understand. And God, we all have our stories, but yours is a story where you took something that was very an adverse situation, a misfortune, as some would see it or put value on it. But here you are, and you are an inspirational person. You've committed your life to turning that, among other incidents, into something very profound and very positive. So I'll acknowledge that first and say that that's just remarkable, that you've been on this journey, and here you are in this moment and all the other moments leading up to this, to be a person who has transcended that experience. So I want to recognize that. But yeah, that song, if you've never heard it before, it's a beautiful song. It's done in kind of a Renaissance, European Renaissance music kind of way, but I can pass it to you at some point. But
I would love to hear that.
Yeah. It's just I don't know. I've always loved it, since I found it about 30 something years ago. So anyway, I'm digressing. So tell me how working with a physical, how would you like to call it? Like, is it do you call it a limitation, or is it a challenge? What's your preferred way of presenting that?
I really prefer the I don't have any preference, and this is a belief that I have, because a lot of for human to actually understand and comprehend what that physical meaning is, we have to give it some word. If we were just to stand back and it is what it is, this is just a condition, this is just a way of being, it doesn't have any name, we don't need to label it. So the way that I label it is I label it straight off, it's a disability.
Okay.
And I'm not going to shy away from describing it as a disability. It's not, it is a limitation, but do I see it as a limitation to life? Like, well, what are we limited to?
Yeah.
So to me, it's a disability, and that's a fact. And for people to understand what I have, sometimes just call it out for what it is. It actually helps people to paint the picture of what is it that I was going through. So it is a disability. It's a physical disability that I have. And for someone else, it may be something that's invisible disability that I don't see it, but I don't know what they're going through until you describe it to me. So I think in some way, I believe every single one of us were dealing with some type of disability in our life. Yes,
I agree. For myself, and it's not really a good comparison, but it was more cognitive, more intellectual growth, because I had pretty strong learning disabilities as a kid, and in the 70s wasn't really recognized as being something that could be dealt with. So they weren't really sure what it was, and I think they labeled it dyslexia. They gave it that little brand, but it was a matter of my not being intelligent. It was more that the paradigm of teaching and things like that were, they just weren't congruent. And so I basically had to educate myself, because they just didn't know what to do with people like myself. And I still don't know what the hell was wrong with me back then. But I
have this belief that, where we are broken, where we are don't have a lot of, or in my case, it's a disability, where I am disabled is also where I can shine.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of recognizing that, it may be a disability to someone else's eye. It may be a disability or limitation to someone else's, how they measure up the standard and what they believe is the normalcy. To me, I don't see it as a limitation. You're reaching up the shelf versus me climbing up a chair, reaching up the shelf. The end goal is the same. We got to the shelf, right? So how we get there, it doesn't matter, is that we get there. And I see that life is a journey, and the journey is that, yes, it's going to throw you a lot of curveball, but once you catch it, what do you want to do with the ball?
Absolutely. And you, in doing research on what you had gone through, that there was, in fact, you journaled your way through a lot of this. There was the stigma, there was the sort of self-doubt or the I don't want to put the word, it's just the self-valuing and the self-worth, I guess is probably the best way to say it. And again, just to go back as a parallel, like as a child who could not get good grades to save his life, I was called all kinds of things by teachers, parents, and peers. And I basically just said, okay, I'm an idiot. I don't, I'm only going to get C's and D's or, my entire life. So I branded myself at it, and it was very, confusing because you look up to your parents and they can, do good or bad. and in their not knowing what was wrong with me, it was all about kind of this theory X management. Like, we're going to break your ass if you don't get the good grades. We're going to, punish you and do all these things. And I thought, well, they didn't understand my perspective at at 7 to 12 years old. I did end up going to a psychologist, and my IQ score was, it certainly didn't present an issue, but there was still this inability to learn. And I don't even know how to this day how I graduated from high school. But what's beautiful is, like, from age 25 going on, I fell in love with learning, and I fell in love with understanding the world and what I want to learn. So it's one of those autodidactic things, which I don't like that label either, because I just want to learn. So I say all this because I'm trying to, again, be an empath and understand going through adversity and going through challenges in life and coming out the other side, feeling like despite that you've got this beautiful life and beautiful presence, and you're doing meaningful work, and you're creating meaning and purpose, and could ask for more.
It was not easy. It was absolutely not easy at all. And I say this because I know there may be a lot of people who still, their life just threw them a curveball. And it's really hard to actually see that as an opportunity. So I just want to, acknowledge people who are going through some really challenging time right now. This is real. And there's no denying in that. It does, just by me coming here and say, oh yeah, it's going to be all turns out to be beautiful. That's a lie. It's not. It does not turn out to be beautiful until you actually take the time to sit with the pain, sit in the darkness, and really think about what does this all mean to you? Like, is it teaching you something? What is the opportunity that you can learn from here? And perhaps in that glimpse of light, that you might be able to see what is possible for you. And so, I'm not coming here to say, life is all beautiful and bright. Going through that journey, I know how difficult and challenging it can be. There's multiple nights where I cry myself to sleep, waking up in the morning, wishing that I don't exist. So it's not easy at all.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think one thing that seems to be in short supply in, perhaps it's just the West, I'm not sure, but say Western culture, is that we aspire to perfection. We aspire to this sort of aesthetic value that is untenable for the most part. And a lot of that's marketing, but a lot of it is just this kind of social normative of, you have to be flawless, you have to be symmetrical, you have to be all these things in order to have value or purpose or meaning in your life. And my God, that's so detrimental to know that could be one of the stronger, sort of gravitational influences on how we move ourselves through time as a culture, as a society. Again, I'm probably going to stick with, like, not just the United States, but most Western culture. And that needs to be reconsidered, I think. And so that's where I think your work shines, in that you can say, it's not about symmetry. It's not about the aesthetic per se. It's fine to be in your skin and be comfortable and, and find your own beauty. But when we have these people that we put on pedestals and these, towers these monuments that we build to glorify things that are just, again, not likely, anyway, you get my point. It's just, we're putting a lot of pressure on something that I don't think is good grounds to put pressure on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a human nature wanting something that's beautiful, and I mean we gravitate towards something that's beautiful, something that's perfect, something that is flawless. That's what every single human being will gravitate towards, something better, something good. That's what we strive for. But at the same time, what does that beauty mean, and how do we label them, and what defines beauty? It's more than just the body, just perfect body. It's more than just having the perfect score on your SAT exam. It's more than just having, making money or having the 6-figure, 7-figure in the bank. That's great, but life is more than just these external means. And so when our expectation is not meeting where we want to be, we struggle. Right? We have that comparison, that comparative narrative that shows up and keep telling us, well, you need to do more than this. You need to be this and that. You need to be A, B, and C in order to be considered as successful. But whose definition is that?
Right.
And I think going through my journey, getting my doctor's degree, going through school, having a pharmacist position in a very stable work environment, I was under the impression that when I get there, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to feel fulfilled. But little did I know, when I got there, there's still something that was missing inside of me. Like I was looking for something that's meaningful so that I don't wake up in the middle of the day feeling that there's something that's empty inside. And that void was just still there, regardless of how successful I am in academic, how successful I am having a stable job, having a steady income, having a roof over my head. There's something missing. And so I was on a mission to search what was missing.
I like to think that meaning making is a process of duality. There is a shadow and a light to meaning making. And so you can make all the meaning you want, and it could be vacuous and it could be empty and unfulfilling, which I think is kind of what you were pointing out there. And it can also be very negative, where your meaning making can be self-destructive or a negative influence or impact on other people. And that leads me to something else that you had mentioned, that we kind of run from the we only want to be in that the light, and seeing only the positive and seeing only that you just have to put down the idea that there's going to be days where you do cry yourself to sleep and that you are going to have these really dark thoughts. That needs to be recognized, I think. And that's missing, I think, from, again, a social contract, a social standard of how we relate to things and how we help ourselves, right? I mean, treating ourselves.
I think one of the interesting concepts between the difference between Western and the Eastern beliefs is that the Eastern belief, we believe that, and I have a lot of background I'm Chinese, I'm Asian, so there's a lot of background in Buddhism, in the Asian culture, and that believes of, suffering is something that is, you embrace it with open heart.
Yeah.
Whereas the Western culture, it's more about how do we avoid the uncomfortable? How do we make ourselves more comfortable by avoiding something? And so the Eastern culture actually teaches to embrace your suffering, to embrace what you're struggling. And through those moments of struggles and suffering, you break through to what is possible. And to me, that's a very important concept to grasp and to learn as a child, because I think coming to America, I have learned and adapted a lot of those Western beliefs that something that's uncomfortable, I want to avoid it. Something that's negative, I want to avoid it. But in reality, the darkness, the shadow, all the things that you don't want in life, it's actually provide a lot of information for you in terms of understanding what is it that you want in life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, I'm not trying to beat up the West, but when the shadow finally catches up with us, or the suppressed negative emotions. That's another way to put it, or the suppressed fear and the anger and the guilt and the shame, and 30 or 40 years of that, it explodes violently, and it doesn't express itself in a way that produces anything good for anybody, especially, you know, if you project it out onto other people. And to speak to Buddhism, I like the idea of the Eightfold Path, where it's and it's in the West too. It's baked into Western philosophy. Like Immanuel Kant had a deontological or a morality standard of oughts and shoulds. And so I look at the Eightfold Path as a sort of Eastern deontological or oughts and shoulds, like, so, you know, proper speech, proper vocation. And so there is it's a very nice list of things that are guideposts for staying on a path of keeping yourself in a space, in that equanimity or the potential for being in a space of equanimity. So yeah, it's a beautiful teaching tool. And I actually listened to one of my philosophers that I follow the other day, and he was like, well, Buddhism and Jainism and Shintoism and some of the Taoism and so forth, that is for the culture of the East, and they're learning those experiences through that lens. And so in the West, the Christ narrative or Abrahamic belief systems and teachings of the Torah and in the Quran are more about, what's going on in Western sensibility. And I thought, well, I was going to, and I'm probably going to reach out to him in the spring because I've interviewed him twice, and I'm thinking, you're living in the 19th century, friend, because he loves 19th century idealist philosophers. And I think we are a global community now. And I think the fact that Buddhism has made it to these shores, and Christianity is worldwide, and Judaism and Islam. If you look at Southeast Asia, there's a lot of Islamic communities there. So it's blending in a way. And I like that idea. I like the Creole that can come from the best of whatever it is that we can focus our attention on. So if you take a little bit of wisdom from Buddhism or the Advaita Vedanta in India, and which Buddhism sort of sprang from that, and put together this beautiful combination that works for you, right? So every person can be different with it, and and that's what I do for my own life. I take a little inspiration from Islam and Buddhism, and I don't adhere to any of it, but just knowing that it's there and it can have truth or essence or whatever it is that you're looking for, a small t truth, but just some things that ring true for you as a person, can be a good way to navigate through the stormy waters of life, or whatever you want to call it.
And I think no matter which culture or beliefs that you adapt to, ultimately, if you look beneath the surface, there's the fundamental truth, and the truth with a capital T, right? Not the small t. The capital T is the ultimate truth to humanity, and the reason why human and us being here. Each and every single one of us are going through a struggle in our life, but that ultimate struggle is supposedly to wake you up to something that's bigger than yourself. And that bigger to yourself is the meaning of your life. It's the life purpose. What do you bring into this world, into the society, into your culture, into your family? That is your ultimate goal and purpose. So we can, when life throws you a curveball or life throws you some lemon, you can catch it and turn it into something beautiful, and not allow that to be the reason you continue to beat yourself up, to be the victim of your life, to be the effect of what life circumstances have happened to you. Or you can turn it into something of a beauty. Turn around, inspire others. Turn around, taking some actions. Turn around and make some change that you can be a better version of yourself from yesterday. And it doesn't even have to be like big, major life changes. It could be just as small as, today I am just going to eat something that's nourishing my body, and that's the small step. And that small step is going to take to another step, And that's how life keeps moving forward. And the more that we do something that inspires us, something that moves along this path, the more that we wake up to realize that this is temporal. This is something that will pass, something that would decay. So what you do inside of you, that's where it matters the most. How you show up every day. What is it? What type of energy you bring into work? Is it always positive? Is it inspiring? Is it empowering? Is it helpful? That is going to matter more than just how you look. What kind of makeup do you wear? How's your hairstyle, right?
Right. Yeah, the exteriority of existence and the aesthetics of existence. And going back to meaning making for a second to tie into what you just said, that again, there can be a duality to meaning making, and you are that conduit of the meaning you see in your life. So if you have a meaning system and it's a say a beneficial, good meaning system, then the expression of your behavior and your actions and your output will reflect that meaning system that you've cultivated. And when there is psychic injury or there is something going on that's not resolved in the way of trauma or any of these other things, that same meaning making process exists, and you are still that same conduit of meaning making. And that's a wonderful way to segue into reflection, self-awareness, metacognition of like, how am I behaving? What, can I really be my own sort of forensic investigator of me, and understand my behaviors and the impact it has on the world.
Yeah. Something I shared with a friend of mine just earlier, it's about the button pushing. And a lot of times, we exist in the life and go through our day, and we think that someone else did something to us, and therefore we're so upset, right? But you can only be upset because you have a button for people to push. If you don't have a button, there's no one can push that button. So nobody can push your button. And so it's about recognizing that everything that happened around us happened within us, right? All the chaos that we see in this world collectively, we know exactly, what happened last year, this year, what happened outside of the world happening inside of us. And so in order to build a world of utopia, which is I'm an optimist, so I totally believe that's possible. If we start taking responsibility today by working the world inside of us.
Yeah.
It starts with me, no one else. It starts with me.
Amen. And I've had these conversations with other persons doing transformative work, and they say the same thing, that if the individual, it's like cells in a body. If one cell is functioning well, and it has influence on other cells, then the cells will eventually find their homeostasis, or whatever that term is that you want to apply to a healthy body. And that's a great, I think, analogy or metaphor for the human species level system. And I like to use the term murmuration or stigmergy, like when you see all the fish turning at the same time or birds flying, we're not quite that kind of species, but when it comes to the social aspect or the cognitive aspect of us, we are in some way like that. There is the mimetic process of we pick up thought viruses and we pick up these sort of collective behaviors. Again, depending on how much exterior or media exposure you have, we all kind of sort of move in these directions. And I think that being aware that we are of that either nature or the capacity to be in that nature, that's one way to be sensitive and aware that your behavior is going to ripple out. You could use the energetic metaphor, like your bad energy is going to put into the system. And if 4 billion of us are in a bad way and we're projecting our anger and trauma and stuff on a daily basis, it's going to throw that system off. And that, in a sense, again, is like that stigmergy, where everything is sort of flowing in a circuit or a flow state, so.
One of the analogy that I love to use is like, there's a lot of us who walk into like a meeting room, or, you walked in and your wife is at home, and suddenly, you notice something is off, like she's upset or something, like, or he's upset. and you sense it without that person telling you, you know what, I am not happy today, I'm angry. You just kind of pick up that vibe, you pick up that vibration, you pick up that energy. And to me, a lot of what we do collectively has to do with, you know, the energy that we send out, the energy that we put out to the world. So if we're seeing a lot of chaos in the world, it's because collectively we probably have been sending out the wrong energy, right? We send it off and then we're like blaming each other. We're all finger pointing each other. There's a lot of negativity going around. Well, it makes sense. The world, it is the way it is. So how do we change that? It's about stepping back and think about and reflecting upon what is it that I'm putting out? How am I showing up today? When I go to my workplace, when I go home, how am I viewing everything? And I kind of see it as, you know, wearing eyeglasses. There's sunglasses with different shade. There's green, there's red, there's purple, right? So depending on which type of glasses that you put on, you may see the world very differently. So if you go home and you wear a red color lenses, then you're going to see the whole entire world as red. Whereas if you put on a new pair of lens, you're going to see the world differently. So it's about understanding ourselves. What are our values? What is our purpose? What is our reason for being here? And what role do I play, not just on a day-to-day basis, but in a bigger sense, in a more of a collective sense? What role do I play? How am I going to serve this society, in my community? How am I going to serve in my family? That is going to open up a lot of opportunity to awaken to the true self.
And to go back to belief systems for a moment, if we were to look through the lens of Buddhism, it would be the reflection on the idea of the no self, so that you can see that I'll go this far. I will say self is illusory. It is, we are beings, but the self, the narrative, the character that we play is a construct. It is something, and it's a very real construct because I'm 52. I've been working on it since I was born. So I've done a lot of work in creating this character that I am, or I play when I'm in front of people, unconsciously most of the time. But that, there is a dichotomy there, that you can be this essence, this being, without being that self. And that sounds kind of contradictory, but I get that in Buddhism. I get that. And Buddha probably might have been saying something, the Buddha, I should say, was maybe saying something a little bit different, but that's how I interpret it, is that you can recognize the self for what it is, and that it is essentially a constructed, and we all are, and it's not bad. We have to, in order to function, we have to be these personalities, we have to be these behavioral traits, we have to be these opinions and these perceptual apparatus to function. But I take that away from that to be very cautious about how I interact with other people, and so that I don't become a reactionary, and I don't foist anything on anybody that I shouldn't, or I can reserve anything that's not going to contribute, like you said, positively to the flow, to the progress of people moving through the human experience as a collective, as a species.
I believe that the concept of no self is really teaching. If I were to use a more modern term, I would describe it as it's a state of no judgment. And no judgment meaning I'm not judging for what it is. I'm just accepting and just kind of like surrender. I think the word would be surrender. I'm just surrender to life experience as it is. It doesn't mean that I'm giving up to life. It just means that I'm not going to attach any label. Call it a disability if you love. Call it a limitation if you want. It's just a state of being of my physical that describes my physical state. There's no meaning to it, right? Without the words, it's just a state of being, my state of being. And that's all there is to it. So that no self is really about having no judgment against yourself or against others. And you experience life just as the way it is.
Absolutely. And I think our animal companions in the world, all the species that we occupy the earth with, we would say from a cognitive sense that they are instinctual. So they live in the moment constantly, and they are in that Buddha state. They are in the being state, the being mode. And so their no self is is a beautiful example of what we can aspire to, because we, bless and curse, are, these deeply self-reflective, metacognitive, phenomenal consciousness kind of creatures, with a higher phenomenal conscious creatures. And there's a whole lot of baggage that comes with that at this stage of our evolutionary or adaptation state, and which is, of course, why the world's going crazy right now, because we've ramped things up with the immediacy of social communication and media and things like that, which is good and bad as well. But I just think that looking at the little ones of nature and or the bigger animals of nature, that they deal with stuff, but they don't possess that faculty of reflection and rumination and all these different things. And I think that's very inspiring cue from nature to say. And the other, I won't go on too much of a tangent, but I think the other thing I take away from beyond no self to the awakening is to say that it is almost a healthy dissociative process. It's a process, like you said, of no judgment. You're stepping back, you are the observer, you are taking in information, again, almost like an instinctual animal would do, but without the layers of ego, judgment, and all the other stuff that might accompany that if we are more preoccupied with, and to use the metaphor, like a lower sort of frequency of interacting with people from, again, fear, guilt, judgment, things like that. So I love that about the awakening process. There's a guy online here on YouTube, his name's Daniel Ingram, and he claims to have gotten to that bodhisattva awakening state. Maybe, I don't know, but in listening to him talk, he talks about, I'm still me, I'm still a normal guy, I still get pissed off, I still do this, I still do that. But he has this layer of, like you just said, just stepping back and not being the reactionary, not being the judge, not being these archetypal roles of sort of lower states of seeing the world and processing information. So.
Mm-hmm. So the way that I was trained as a coach, we called it the energy leadership. So basically, everybody have that ability to tap into that non-judgment state of being. And there are basically 7 levels. It's also known as the negative and positive energy, but in energy leadership terms, it's called catabolic energy and anabolic energy.
Nice.
So the catabolic energy is more like something that's more catabolic. So your body releases a lot of catabolic hormones. Those are the hormones that causes you to do a fight and flight. You either fight or you flee, right? So when you're in that state of catabolic energy, you tend to show up being stressed, being the victim, being, frustration, anxiety, all these type of negativity usually happen in the first 2 levels. So level 1 is the victim state. Level 2 is more of the anger or the fighting mode. I have to push through in order to accomplish something. So that's level 2. Level 3 is you start to recognize there's personal responsibility. We all have responsibility to come to this world and do our parts. So you start, things doesn't happen to you, but oh well, now I'm here catching the curveball. What do I do with it? So you start taking personal responsibility, and you can access the next level, which is the compassion level. You start sending out these vibrations about love, kindness, and serving. Your main goal is to go out there and serve others. So a lot of mom is like very notorious for having a lot of level 4 energy. Level 5 energy is more opportunity. What opportunity do I see here? So a lot of entrepreneur and business owner, they have a lot of level 5 energy. It's about how do I create a win for me as well as for the company. So that's level 5 energy. Level 6 energy is more about co-creation. We're all in this together. Let's sit down, co-create something that you can bring onto the table, I can bring onto the table, and that's co-create something together. So that's level 6 energy. Level 7 energy, which is the highest level of energy, it's about the state of wisdom and non-judgment. And this is where we go beyond the no self. There is no self, and that we are here in this world because it is what it is, and we're embracing it every single moment. So the idea of this 7 level of energy is that we can access it every single day, every single minute. And as we're sitting here, we can also access it. So every single one of us have that ability to awaken to that non-self. any given moment. And one of the analogy I often use is like, imagine you are walking into an elevator and there are 7 buttons for you to press right now. You can press any of the level, and when the door open, your life, your outcome, your result is going to be very different depending on which level you choose. You can choose to be the victim, the door will open, you have a different set of result in front of you. Whereas if you were to tap into that level 7, level 6 energy, co-creation, and just going there, out there with no judgment, the door is going to open, and that's going to allow you to see the world from a complete non-judgmental, complete objective, and being the observer to life. And you take life, you embrace life as it is. It's just as beautiful as how you want it to be.
That's awesome. That's great. I've never heard anabolic and catabolic used in as a representative way like that. That's awesome. Because I usually hear, you talk about like steroids or things like that. There's anabolic steroids, and then there's prednisones, which, kind of deplete the muscle tissue or degrade the body to a degree. But that's an awesome thing. And so I will ask you this, in teaching that, when we are at that 6, 7 level, that it's almost like you could envision it as a pyramid with a hierarchical, aspirational outcome agenda. But also I would almost see it as nonlinear, or something has its modes and its ability, that there's no wrong or fault. If you were working at 7, but suddenly you need to be at 1 for a little while because something's coming up or something presented itself to you, and you can't shake it off right away. So it's almost, am I right in my intuition that is something that can be,
Yes.
Like you said, the elevator analogy, but there's no harm, no wrong in going to the first
There's no
floor.
right or wrong. And because, life, it happens. And every single minute, it calls upon you to react in certain situations. Okay. When you see danger, you don't want to have that level 7 of non-judgment. Oh, let me just stand here and see what happened. No, you want to be able to fight, right? Or flight, right? So right. Depending on the situation, you may go through that seven level skill any given moment of time. So it's a constant state of flow. And I love the word flow because it allows you to not being so critical when you are criticizing someone, or you having some like drama happening in your life, and you have to be in their moment and just all heated up. That's okay. But how do you get yourself out of it? You have 6 other levels that you can choose from. So it's about seeing the opportunity and options that's there in front of you. I don't have to always choose being the victim. I have 6 other levels that I can choose. Which perception do I want to choose? I can take personal responsibility, or I can reach out and ask someone for help. I can reach out and see what the opportunity is here. So there's all these other levels that I can access. So it's about giving someone the ability to see what is possible, and that they're not just stuck with feeling that this is the way of life, and feeling at the effect of the life. And so it gives you the ability to become the cause of life.
Lovely. I love that system. Now, I know we're limited on time for this chapter of our conversation. So what I would like to do is ask you about your Machu Picchu moment, because we can probably take us to full hour on covering that. And then I would like to, before we sign off, also just start talking about your book. And the book is on its way to me, and I want to read it. And then I want to bring you back, and we're going to talk about the book. So yes, perfectly normal. And I will have that in my hands before too long. And is it that particular copy?
No, it's going to be a newer copy.
Oh, okay. I was going to wave to it and say, hi, I'll see you in a little while. I'm very much
saying hello.
Yeah, hey, bookie. But yes, whatever shows up, I will love it nonetheless. There's no difference. But I do want to touch on the Machu Picchu moment, because I think that's a really cool story. And then we'll finish out with teasing people about how we're going to come back and talk about your book in a couple of weeks, and we'll do a part 2. So I'll hush up now, and you tell me about your Machu Picchu moment.
Yeah. So by the time I was done feeling sorry for myself, feeling like a victim to my life, I decided to make a change. And that change what was really the easiest thing for me to do at that moment. I know emotionally, mentally, it was harder for me to overcome these challenges, to say, you know what, this happened to me and I'm all happy and all sunshine. That was more challenging for me. What was easy for me was overcoming the physical limitation. So for a long time, I didn't allow myself to go to the gym. I didn't work out. So of course, my body started to, as I age, I start to collect more fat. I collect more body tissues. And
Guilty.
So the next thing I know, I wanted to be able to just clean out my diet. I wanted to, really adapt into a healthier lifestyle. So the first thing I did was I decided to sign up to a gym. Maybe I could just walk into the gym and see what would happen. And so I did that. I signed up to the gym, but I was looking at all these equipment. I don't know what to do with them. So the next step would follow was to hire a personal trainer. And then we start working for about 6 months. And around that time, a lot of my friends came from this amazing trip that they couldn't stop talking about. And I felt kind of left out because I could never participate in their conversation about their physical activity, going for a run, going to the gym. I want to be part of that conversation. So I spoke to my personal trainer. I said, look, I want to be able to do what they do. And my idea is I'm going to sign up to hike the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. And so his eyes were wide open. Michelle, what did you want to do? I said, I want to go hike. I wanted to be part of the conversation. Awesome. And he said, well, okay, you know that it's going to be a very challenging place. People actually died. And you know that you are limited, right? I said, yes, I recognize all of that. Check, check, check. Yeah. But I still want to do it. So we worked on, training myself. I go hike every Sunday. The following year in September 2016, I booked myself a ticket with my 2 crutches and a luggage. I flew myself to Cusco, Peru, hiked through the Inca Trail, 26 miles altogether, 4 days, camped out, totally roughed it out. Didn't have a hot shower for the 4 days. Wow. And I know like by the last day I was just dying to get a hot shower.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, but it was the most amazing trip ever. Wow. And I remember going there during the first day, it was the toughest because it was my first time ever going uphill nonstop. And it was at a high altitude. So I started to have these high altitude syndrome. I had difficulty in catching out my breath, and I was carrying a 15-pound day pack with me. So that day pack felt even heavier than what I had imagined. The first night, my tour leader sat me down and he said, well, Michelle, we have 10 people on this team, but you were the slowest. So from day one, unless you're able to catch up with the team, day 2 is going to be a lot more challenging. Now, if you want, I can have someone take you back and you can go home if you want to. And I was just sitting there after dinner in a tent. We had tent set up for the night. And I was just sitting there. I was crying. Because I did not come this far to be this far. And there's a reason why I signed up to do this hike. I want that sense of belonging, that I belong somewhere. I want that sense of being acknowledged. Yes, you are different. You look different. You're short. You're disabled, but you can do this. And I'm here for you. And so I was looking for that sense of belonging from everyone around me that fully accept me for who I am. And so I sat there, I was crying, and I told my tour leader, I said, I don't want to go home. There is no way I'm going back. I made it this far. I am going to move forward. And so that night we came up with a solution. He said that in order for me to catch up with the rest of the team, why don't you get up early in the morning and start your hike? So I would every day from that point on, so the following 3 days, I would wake up 5 o'clock in the morning, pack away my stuff, and I would start the hike at 5 o'clock in the morning with my headlight on, my day pack on, and I would barely made it to the camp on the second day.
Okay.
And second day was the longest day. I remember reaching up to the highest peak at they called it the Dead Women's Pass. And I know, right? I wonder why.
Yeah, what an auspicious, anyway.
No. Little did I know, right?
Welcome to Dead Woman's Pass.
Right? I made it to the Dead Woman's Pass.
Yeah.
And it was at 14,000 feet above sea level. So it's really high. And I kept asking the person who was walking with me just to make sure I'm safe. I kept asking him, how far are we? How far are we? Because I was to the point where I was ready to give up. I was ready to give in. And he said, 100 feet, just 100 feet more. And he kept lying to me. Like that 100 feet was seen to be the longest 100 feet.
Yeah. 10 rounds of 100 feet.
Yes. But so I made it to the final last 200 feet. I broke down in tears. I was crying. I was so amazed by the fact that I was able to come this far. That was second day. And from that point on, it was a lot easier because then it's about going downward.
Okay.
And I found it a lot easier to go down than coming up. Coming up was all so these ancient giant steps. They're about, I'm 4 feet 4 inches tall. So they are about the length of my leg. In order for me to get up to the stairs, I would have to bring my crutches, put it on the next steps, and get down to my knees and hand, crawl up, making sure that I'm safe, and then pick up my crutches again. So I keep repeating that a couple of routes where that's what I had to do in order to make it. So I keep doing that, and a lot of that journey I trained my upper body because it's about pushing. It's about pushing up. I did a lot of push-ups that day.
Yeah. Get that upper body.
Right? And I wore a Fitbit, so my Fitbit tracked how many steps I was making. So I was making way more than 14,000. People say, "Oh yeah, you gotta walk over 10,000 steps." Now I made more than 10,000 steps.
Yeah, got it covered. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I came home, and the last day, I remember when I went to the top, made it through the gate. There's people coming from all over the world, and as I walked through the gate, everyone stood up and they were all cheering me. They were all standing up, and I was just speechless. I had never imagined that I would be able to do this. And I would have never imagined that this is something that can be done.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it by myself. I did it with the help of others. I did it because my personal trainer really pushed me hard. He encouraged me to get out there and keep working on it. You got this, Michelle.
Right.
It takes that one person. And in my case, it takes multiple people around me to encourage me to say, Michelle, cut that shit, cut that out, and just go out and do it. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I want to rest on that because I want people to think about that. And for me, I always think symbolically, and I'm like, there's so many symbolic things going on there, the stairs and the height, the altitude, the adversity, the voice of the guide saying, that's your inner critic, right? I mean, you sure you don't want to just turn around and go back? So many things were experienced there. And what a way to come back to our world, excuse me, and inspire other people with that story and help other people to find their Machu Picchu moments or go out and do their Machu Picchu challenge and face that. Yeah. Face something that's just kind of ridiculous. I mean, like I'm trying, so I'm reasonably able. One of my hips isn't that great, so I'm trying to imagine walking that distance, but that's just very admirable that you did that.
And I think I wanted to circle back to what we had started with in the beginning. For me, it was a physical disability.
Mm-hmm.
It was a physical disability that stopped me from seeing who I am, from believing that I am capable of doing things like a normal individual. There's a lot of things that I had believed that I couldn't do, I cannot do. But little did I know that with training, with support, with help, that I can do things beyond anything that I imagine. And so for someone else, taking the same idea of having some type of disability, if it's not a visible disability, if it's some type of invisible disability, how do you take something that's invisible, something that stops you from really moving forward in life? How do you take that and turn it into an opportunity to grow, to learn, to develop, to expand, to explore? There's so many different ways that we can take that same disability and turn it into something more beautiful.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. And I also I'll add this in, and it's kind of cheesy, but I think suffering is a great master, and going through adversity is a great course in life, So in other words, I think sometimes we live in this world where we're like, oh, if things were just such a way, but can you imagine how boring life would be if we all sat in our hammocks and sipped on mint juleps or whatever our favorite beverage is, and nothing ever happened other than just good things? I mean, this circles back to the idea that, the running away from adversity, disabilities, challenges, and trauma from the past, it can be embraced, it can be taken on. And those 7 steps, the 7 modes, I might call them, are a good example of that. How are you going to show up for your master, for your teacher, for the course that you're about to take? And some people, goodness knows, some people go through some really extreme courses and come out as inspirational people. And so I look to you and I acknowledge you again for being someone who, again, fortune presents gifts not according to the book. And what you do with that quote unquote fortune or the gifts is up to you. And so you're a wonderful example of how you can flourish, you can be in a state of well-being and an inspiration to others, despite circumstances. So thank you for joining me in this conversation today. I know we're getting close to our time that we said we would stop, and which is good. It's discipline for me because, like I said to you before we hit record, I'm like, I could talk forever, and people who watch my podcast know that I do that. So I'm looking very much forward to reading your book. Can you hold it up again? I want to do another plug for it. All right. So I will bring Michelle back after I've read Perfectly Normal, and we'll have a second conversation because an hour is not long enough to have a good conversation with you. We had a great conversation for an hour. I want more. I want to take it further. So we'll plan on that. And I thank you so very much for joining me today. It was wonderful to hear you share your story and share what you provide as a coach. And I think I want to cover that more in our second conversation too. I want to look into your to what you do as a coach, a coach's coach, and some of the other aspects of what you do. So, but we'll stop for now. And did you want anything else before we close out?
I would just lead the audience with just say yes. Like there's a lot of scary things in life in that happens. Just say yes. Just close your eyes and say yes, and let it come. Embrace it, and you're gonna learn so much after you say yes. You just say yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again, Michelle. It was an honor to have this conversation with you. And I'd like to thank everyone who's still watching with us. I love pushing conversations long so that you know who the diehards are. So to you, I acknowledge you, and I thank you so much for staying with us, with Michelle and myself for the duration of this conversation. Now, Michelle, I will say goodbye to you after we hit record, but I'll say goodbye to you two people now. And again, thank you for your presence. So take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.